Welcome to The Lost Signals discusses film and TV. Using the revolutionary Manzur-Ramosi-Thurlow scale,
or MOTS,
we scrupulously review these art forms with an emphasis on narrative structure. Join us for another entertaining episode.
Hello there, and welcome back to The Lost Signals discusses and reviews film and television. And tonight, we're doing another continuation of our foreign four-ways, I suppose I'd call it. We're doing a movie called Children of Heaven from 1997. I am your overweight, aging gym coach, Scott Thurlow. Here with my cohorts slash runners in the race, Jonathan Ian Manzer.
This movie not to be mistaken with Children of Men or Children of God.
Exactly. And Stephen Amosi.
And as you can see, I won the race.
Mm-hmm.
Or I finished third in the race, I'm sorry.
Indeed. And Chris Morgan.
I have a lot of experience landscaping.
That is true. So yeah, we're going to jump into it, and I believe Steve-O has prepared a pretty good log line for us.
Oh man, you're really building me up. My log line is, guilty shoes ain't got no rhythm.
That is very much true. And we're about to discuss that, so Ian, with that, why don't you elaborate upon the plot?
Ali and his sister, and I suppose an ungendered baby of sorts, are children growing in a poor district of South Tehran. Mm-hmm. Their family, as mentioned, is poor, and on the way back from the cobbler, Ali loses his sister's shoes, which
precious
they
and
can't
only pair.
afford to get a new pair. So they go to complicated lengths to swap sneakers and compete in races, or a race to get third place to win the sneakers.
A fourth grade race.
Yeah. And it is a very simple tale. It's a very, I think, Scott, you compare it to like an O. Henry story of sorts. But they do a fantastic job of building this tension and stakes for what's inherently an unimportant story. It's an incredibly important story if you are a child. You're lost a pair of shoes, your parents are going to be angry. How are we going to get away with this?
I mean, if you don't mind, like, it's from the eyes of children,
yes.
So it's like what they would think is an imposing thing upon them.
But I was 100% invested the entire time in their struggles. They constantly ratchet, or they make the consequences the audience very aware of the consequences and the struggles they're dealing with. And the end of this, that race, is one of the most intense sports movie moments.
Sure. Yeah,
it's just like 8-year-old kids running in a 3K or something like that. But it is like all of us were on the edge of our seats watching this, unsure of if he was going to win it, if he was going to lose it, if he was going to achieve his goal of the third place.
The room felt as though we were,
spectators
in AC watching a horse race. I got money on this. Yelling like, "No, you can't finish third. You can't finish first. You have to finish third.
Come on, get up there. I need a trifecta." Yeah, but yeah, no, you're right. Like, I agree with everything you said, the tension and so forth. So
what I have to point out about this is, I feel, a film aimed at kids. It definitely has it's from their point of view. It's there aren't the deep trials here, but Scott, a notorious hater of children,
true,
was rooting for these.
The film
kids.
won me to the side. Yes,
and the thing is, where it should have been, even though it wasn't aimed at me, I was very invested, especially at the end, in their story. And I really can't find much fault in this. The pacing is wonderful. The tension building is wonderful. Their struggle, everything here works for me.
Yeah. There's a really fascinating... what's really fascinating about the plot is, I was probably on a very strong 2, possible 3 before the end of the movie, and I'm almost definitely going to give this a 3 at this point, because the end of it is so good. Like, and that's
Agreed.
the
It
lasting
makes it-
image that
it
you have of
cements
this
it, yeah.
film. And I think I was talking to you guys earlier about, like, this is the, like, it almost feels like the consummation of all of the movies that in the US that came out between like 85 and 95, where like
Sure.
that you know there were a ton of movies that like ended in a race of some kind, but like this one, for
Literally
some reason,
ends in
like
a race.
even though the stakes of all of those were probably actually higher in like real life, but like this one, the stakes felt so high, and it was really important because the idea, I think it had a lot to do with, because the idea was like he wanted to finish third, and he ends up finishing first. Like the idea that he wins this race and somehow still loses it is really interesting to me. I also wanted to point out the idea that the title of this is Children of Heaven, and I went into it not knowing anything about it and really expecting something way more high stakes than what we got. But I loved what happened in this film. And, like, you know, Ian, you described the plot fairly well, and, like, you kind of went over the strong points of it. And that's kind of what you get. Like, that's what it is. Like, it's the opposite of, like, you get what's on the tin, as Scott likes to say, right? Like, Children of Heaven seems like a very high stakes name for something. I think it's a lot. Like, I probably went in that, like, thinking of things like Children of God, or like City of Lost Children, or you know, whatever else, like the Children of Men, right? Like those movies were all very, very high stakes, like kind of depressing movies.
Sure, but it's a slice of life tale.
And this is like an uplifting, like, little story about. I don't necessarily want to say uplifting, because like clearly this family is going through hardship and like has their troubles, but on the whole, it's fairly like optimistic, and I really like that about it.
You were talking about a lot of like American films around the same time, where there was like the stakes seemed kind of an artifice, like with a lot of films that were out there, and the stakes in this were extremely simple, and it was much more invested in them than I would be at something where it's. I think what have you brought up the Karate Kid, and I don't remember. It's been a long time since I saw that, what the stakes were. But to me, this was not any kind of artifice. I mean, the kids were running this race in whatever shoes they had, in jeans, in their school clothes. I mean, like button down collared shirts. So it was a very relatable. It's like there was no, you have to get, whatever. Oh God, I'm blocking the names of what you were with karate, the robes, but
the geese.
The geese, yes, thank you. But it was a very the stakes were a pair of shoes, and
Right.
no, but I don't mean to minimize it, but there
But the children's eyes.
but there was no artifice.
Exactly.
You didn't have the bully that you had overcome, like the Cobra Kai or whatever. And in this one, you basically had all the kid wasn't fighting against any school bullies. All he wanted to do was get his sister a pair of shoes that he lost from the beginning.
Now,
And the other thing, and this is going to probably go to style, but I'm going to also mention it about the race.
hold on. Can you hold this for 1 second? I just want to jump in very quickly and ask this question. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't somebody's name in this Cobra Kai? Like,
No.
No.
or like it was.
I had said that,
Cobra
but
something.
It was just an Iranian name that.
Well, no, it was Kobra, right? And then something else that could have been pronounced Kai.
No.
All right.
It was half
Maybe
a
I'm
dozen. It was 50-50.
Maybe I'm wrong.
A
I'm
side
sorry.
tangent.
I apologize.
Go ahead, Chris.
No, all I was going to say was there's a movie in the early 80s called The Black Stallion. It was based on the book.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I remember one part in the movie where they like cut out all the music and any external sounds and just focused on the sounds of the horses on the the hooves on the track. And the same thing happened with this one. They're at a point in the race where they cut out all the sounds, but the kids running on the pavement.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just such a lovely little texture to it that just added to the I mean, like when the one kid tripped our protagonist, I screamed, "Kill him!" Like I'm like, you
You're
know,
super
very
invested
intense
in
about it.
yeah. But
I
the
got
thing
scared.
is, it was incredible how, and I don't mean to minimize it when I say it's a simple story, because you know, your stakes in anything are relative to the importance they are to you for whatever reason, and it's just a lovely movie.
Chris, it is a simple story, but the filmmaker
But told so
treats
well.
it
Yeah.
as if it is a high stakes event. And I think you
In
mentioned
the-
that earlier because it's important to the kids. But
Yeah.
the thing is, it's filmed like it's in a sense, it's paced as a film with much higher stakes than actually exists. And that's what makes it fascinating.
And there's no artifice at all.
Yeah.
And because in a lot of times you see parodies where
But
they'll
it's not
create
a parody.
no.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, it's funny how you'll create in like American Western cinema, you'll create some kind of artifice where low stakes is like kind of a humorous kind of thing. It's like, oh, we're investing all this in like, you know, a pair of shoes, and you have like,
Sure.
you know, some people who can buy a pair of shoes like without blinking their
It
eyes.
could have gone satirical, but it
Yeah, but
was the opposite of
what
that.
I'm saying is, this was in earnest. What Western nations who are much richer, would see as kind of like a skit or something, where it would be like where like if you're going to mock, like say, the Black Cyan or Ford versus Ferrari or the Karate Kid, you'd make the stakes lower, and it would kind of be like a joke. Oh, we're playing for these, pair of like tap shoes or whatever. But in this thing, it's just like, I was so invested in this kid getting this pair of sneakers for his sister. It's just like it was just as lovely.
It's completely earnest in
Yeah.
everything
Yeah,
it does.
exactly. No, I agree. It's very like wears its heart on its sleeve. And I was saying we took a break about 70% through the movie, and I was like, I'm looking at a strong 2, depending on how it plays out. When it played out, I'm like, all right, 3. Got me movie. I think we're all giving it a 3, and yeah, because of everything in general, sure, it's simple on the surface, but it's told and just manifested so well that it somehow elevates it beyond that.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
all right, and with that, Steve-O, why don't you talk about the themes, please?
So there's this really fascinating thing this film does, that is it reminds you of the stakes that you had as a child, which I really, really love about this. It reminded you of that time that you lost something when you were a kid, and like how
Intense, that
terrified
was,
you were
yeah.
of your parents, like of being mad at you about that, and like how much you tried to hide it if you possibly could, and like all of that. This film goes through all that stuff. It reminds me a little bit of, and this might be out of left field a little bit, but I think that it is a good like kind of parallel of like a Noah Baumbach movie. And we just all watched
I see what you
Marriage
mean.
Story.
Sure,
Where, like I feel
sure.
like he does a good job when in his movies of like showing those little moments that nobody else really thinks about, but are important and stick with you.
It's a slice of life, so like it grants itself its own importance, even if it isn't that on the surface. Like I said, yeah.
Yeah, so like I think that this movie is all about those little moments, especially when you're a kid. Like this movie's about like reminding you of like what was important to you, like the things that are important to you when you're an adult, and when you're a child are very different. And like this movie does a good job of reminding you what was important to you when you were a kid. Like the lost sneakers become such an important, super huge touchstone in this movie. To the point where they are deeply involved.
They're like somehow
every
beyond a
important-
MacGuffin. Like
like,
they're actually important.
They're deeply involved in every important moment in this movie, and it's not about the sneakers. It's about that thing that really is just that really important thing to you when you're a kid. Like you just like you have such a smaller worldview, I guess, like at
Sure.
that point where it's like this thing can like really embody like a lot of your worldview, and like they do a great job of like in the movie, and the director Majidi, I believe is his name, just does an amazing job of like focusing on the shoes throughout and like reminding you that, oh yeah, like almost to the degree where you're like, oh yeah, if I'm this kid and if I'm in this kid's head, like the only thing I
It's
can
the most
focus on
important thing.
is the shoes, and like it just goes back.
It's gotta
to
be the shoes.
It goes back to the shoes all the time. It goes back to like focusing on the shoes. It goes back to like looking at them, and it's this huge theme of like, I guess if you're looking at it from a very shallow angle, it's like the shoes are important, but like really it's not the shoes, it's the focus on one thing is like being very important. The one mistake you've made, the most recent mistake you've made, like and the biggest one, right? Like being the most important thing to you, and like it just keeps resurfacing and like keeps coming into your mind because that's the only thing you can think of, because you know if you get exposed for having screwed that up,
You get the wooden spoon.
it's on you. Yeah, exactly. Like you're in trouble.
But the interesting thing about this is the sneaker. I mean, given the fact that these folks were poor, the loss of the shoes were a big deal to them.
Right.
Yeah, of
But
course.
the thing that
The
was
stakes,
also
like you
interesting is Ali sacrificed his shoes because he was running the race for his sister. He destroyed his shoes trying to win shoes for his
It's
sister.
like the Magi thing.
Yeah,
I
it's
said.
like the Magi thing. And the thing is, and I was going to draw a weird little comparison, because a lot of times, it's these simple things that, even me, like I lost my wedding ring about a year in, and it's not an expensive ring. And I went out and I rented I didn't know where it was, so I rented a metal detector, and I basically took apart our sink and did everything. And like a year later, and like, well, you guys, for anybody who doesn't know, the back steps leading out to my backyard are a death trap. But the day
Terrifying.
I can attest to that.
the day
We've
those
almost
things
killed ourselves
broke,
many times.
I swept out from under it and heard this ding, 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 ding. And I found my wedding ring. And like for the last year and a half, Beth's like, oh, we'll get you a new wedding ring. And it wasn't expensive. I'm like, it's not about that. I don't want another ring. So, but like, to me, there's not even a fair comparison to it, because a loss of a $100 ring isn't going to make or break anybody, but a pair of shoes is going to break these things. But what I'm saying is, like, even in life, it's a simple thing. And, we're not rich, but the thing is, and we're definitely better off than this family was. So it's a great perspective on, mine was a sentimentality over something that wasn't overly expensive. Here was a sentimentality mixed with necessity, mixed with familial obligation, mixed with this kid felt so bad about it that he would do anything to replace his sister's shoes. It really was, the stakes were very high on many levels for, what most of us would take for granted.
No, I agree. So I'm going to say two things. I want to bring back to something that you said about E.T., in fact, where like Elliot is describing his life to E.T., and it's a childlike scope. Here's a bunch of Ninja Turtles, right? So like, again, that ties into the scope and the stakes that the plot and the story sets up, and as viewed from like the perspectives of the characters, and maybe that bleeds also over a little bit into antagonists, but I'm going to steal something like it seems obvious. The classism, like, of course, like to them, it's an important thing. Like these are the things they have. They have to make these goods, if you will, like these necessities work. And when Ali realizes like he kind of messed up, and as you said, Steve-O, it's a child like, oh shit, now what? I'm gonna do the best I can, like to like outthink and like disguise this from my parents, and to make it good, make it up to my sister who I let down.
Yeah, I really quickly, I really identified with when he cries to make his sister feel bad to not tell her parents at the at first when it happened. Like, I very much identified that, like having my brother, like, when I was a kid.
You're playing upon your siblings' emotions.
Yeah, so I was the older brother. Yeah, of course. Like, I would do that. I would, like, try to make him feel bad so he didn't tell my parents some bad shit that I did, right? Like,
good thing your brother doesn't listen to our episodes.
Yeah. I mean, he won't listen to this at all, but if he did, he would know what I was talking about. He'd be all right with it.
Sure. But what I'm saying is, like, I think it bleeds over a little bit into antagonism. But I'm gonna turn it over to E.
One of the fascinating things to me is the view of classism through a child's eyes.
Yeah,
Because they don't really it's almost an awakening, especially with the sister in this, when she loses the pen and she sees this girl from a middle class background because they share a school and all that.
certainly
they're
more
not quite
more well off
yeah.
than they are. Yeah,
And like it's almost class awakening that's happening in the kids, because I don't think they really grasp, in a sense, like economic theory, or they understand they're poor, but I think he's more afraid of getting the wooden spoon, as my mother used to threaten with me, than he is necessarily with a complete understanding of why this is
sure.
a big deal.
But I think they converge almost.
But
right?
I think it's fascinating. And for instance, what his father has the shame of going out begging for work, where Ali doesn't have that shame. Oh no, just ask.
Yeah.
And it's, I think it's a really unique take on what will become, say, like Parasite 1, particularly for the same exact
Exactly.
thing.
I was actually just going
Good
to say
call.
that. Like, it reminds me of Parasite a little bit. Like, there is, I mean, in terms of that, like, I'm not going to go too much into the comparisons. There are comparisons to be had there for sure. But, like, the really fascinating thing is, like, when he goes out for work and, like, the father is, like, feels shame about it. Or, like, and can't, like, he starts stammering because he feels shame. And, like, the kid is like, hey, you need a gardener? Like, because that's what he's been told to say. And, like, that's all that they need.
They
There's no stigma attached to it.
They also get the job because a rich young kid wants to have a friend to
A
play
playmate,
with for a
yeah,
little
of course.
I
bit.
was just going to say that because the kids don't see class.
Exactly.
And the kid, and you obviously,
They don't-
because of their class,
But they're awakening to
They
it
don't see it the
throughout
way those do, but they're realizing there's a divide in some sense. Yeah, of
Yeah.
course.
because this kid lives basically in a gated house. To have a
this. Basically, legitimately.
all right, legitimately lives
Literally
in
a gated house.
Literally.
He's left alone with his grandpa, and his grandfather appreciates so much the work that his dad does, and little kid appreciates so much
Just having
Ali's company.
someone else. Yeah.
And when he fell asleep in the swing, and Ali, puts a stuffed animal back on him it's just such a lovely little human moment.
Exactly.
Also, I'm sorry. Might I add that, like, there's an interesting thing, and I think this is probably a cultural thing where his father tries to refuse payment initially, and I think that is,
But knowing
that he was going to get
Yeah.
payment, right? Like he
Exactly.
he wasn't actually trying to refuse payment, but, like, that's an interesting thing just to see, where he's like, no, this doesn't. I don't need payment for this. And he's like,
Well,
no, let me give you this.
Was it that he didn't want payment, or that the
No.
grandfather was giving him more than
It was
he
the
thought?
I
it
don't know.
was?
Eventually, it was that, but, like, at first, he was like, "No, I don't need to be paid for doing this," and you're like, "But that's why
Well,
you
it's
came
also
here."
a pride thing too.
exactly. Yeah.
So it's really fascinating to see, like, that's not something that would happen in America, right? Like that's certainly a different cultural thing. Where, like,
For sure.
you wouldn't in America be like, "No, I don't need payment for this." Like, if you had gone, like, going to somebody's house and be like, "Do you need a gardener?"
Nor in America would a kid try to get third place to get sneakers for his sister.
No, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Maybe in some places in America.
The thing would be like, oh, I got these new, I got these new sneakers. Here are the ones that I blew out making the race. Here, these are yours now.
But anyway, I'm sorry.
No, but the other thing is, I think I don't know where to put this in, so I'm going to bring it up. The fact that, Scott, I think you brought up the fact that the repetition of them, always been between classes, changing shoes. Like, she went to school in the morning, he went to school in the afternoon, and they always showed them the interaction of them, exchanging shoes, him going in and being late, and all this stuff. And it's like, it's one of those things where minutia is a very subtle art. You can either drag it through the mud, or you actually can
Or weave it into the plot.
or have it purpose. Yeah, because sometimes minutia, even in a slower paced film, works. And other times it's just like, well, we got 80 minutes. The studio wants me to make it like,
pad.
90 minutes, so we got to pad it out. There was no padding in this. It served a purpose to reinforce this this need.
Agreed. So I think that's a strong one all around for themes because of all the ways they weave that. I don't think we'll move on. Chris, why don't you keep talking? What is the antagonist of this film?
Okay, first I want to say that...
Is it classism again?
It might be. First I want to say that, yes, I did find my wedding ring, and it's now... I don't ever wear it because I'm afraid of losing it again.
Good to know.
I just want to make sure I didn't left that clear.
He does have 4 other rings on.
No, these are silicone
Sorry.
rings.
Those are all his other
Because
wedding rings.
If I lose them, then they're $20. Easy peasy. No sentimental value. But the antagonist is something I've been mulling over since watching the film. Is it classism? Is it poverty? I mean,
they're interwoven.
It's the wooden spoon.
Is it
goddammit.
well, the thing
carrot
is,
versus
Wooden
the stick.
spoon is never
because
shown.
they built it up where at the beginning where you think his dad might actually beat him, and it turns out that this guy is trying to provide for his family. I mean, again, we're seeing it from the kid's perspective. So from the kid's perspective, if I tell dad that, I lost his shoes, he's going to beat me. And that may or may not, whatever the kid's perspective is. The antagonist didn't turn out to be like something from a Dickens novel where you
There's no Fagin.
Yeah, there's no character or like person. Or
not like the biggest asshole in the film, and he wasn't even that big of an asshole. Was a truant officer, and the thing is, it's just like there's no big baddie. So the antagonist has to come from a greater theme of like classism or.
I must say here, we have a 9-year-old kid here. With a 40-year-old man's face.
Sure. That someone goes into protagonist, but I get what you mean.
This kid is
He
nothing
felt it,
but
yeah.
antagonized the entire film.
Yeah, seriously.
And it's the representation of all the fears of what being found out that they lost the shoes.
Yeah, that is actually a really good thing.
No, I mean,
because that really... Very short, all the existential things in a child's life or anybody's life, it's
a lot of people get paralyzed by not wanting to confront problems, but they're stuck within that in their mind, and that's worse than anything in reality.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
He's stuck right there.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
I would say it's both, right? So it's like societal pressures, like yes, the classism, as we mentioned earlier, that's the situation in which Ali lives in. And so therefore, and of course, being 9, it becomes so much more laser focused in the mind of a person of that age. So it covers both layers. So yeah, you're right. Of course he felt antagonized the whole time, even if it was just over a pair of shoes. But it's not just a pair of shoes, as we mentioned. It's symbolic of a greater antagonist. Mm-hmm. So yeah, while there's no character, of course, it's again, Chris, an incorporeal force, right?
Yeah.
But I think in this case, it was so, again, well interwoven through the characters and through the situation and setting at large that's the obvious one to me, and it deserves a 1.
Yeah, and I can't stress the point enough. If you don't see the antagonist physically, you can see it manifest in Ali's face.
Exactly.
It's just lovely.
Yeah,
the poor kid, but
the portrayal was very spot on.
The antagonist in this to me is absolutely the monster in a child's mind made out of what is going to happen to him because he has done this, right? And it's done so perfectly because you never actually see what the real consequences of that would have been or actually are. So it's all built up in his head, oh, I'm gonna get it for this, and that's something that everybody I think can kind of identify with.
Oh, absolutely, of course.
And
it's universal, yeah, man.
That's a perfect antagonist, and it really is brought throughout. There are scenes where his sister Zara is running back to him to give him back his shoes that are much too big for her, and there's a lot of tension built up through those scenes of trying to get to each other, trying to reach each other so they can pass off the one pair of shoes that they have between the two of them.
I just want to make a point quickly. I remember Chris's emotional reaction when she dropped the shoe in the gutter, and the chase of that. It was legitimately terrifying that she would lose another shoe.
Right.
Yeah, the stakes were it was interwoven, set up so well that it was very impactful when that happened.
Yeah, we all realize that the stakes are very low, But to these kids, and it's done very well and it's shown very well.
Exactly.
The stakes are super high
Because it's through
and,
their
like,
eyes.
It's done very well, and like that makes a good antagonist to me. So I'm going to give it a 1.
Agreed. I think we're all giving it 1s, and it'll move me along too. Speaking of protagonists, so I guess I'll make my case. It's like 80 to 90% Ali, right? I guess about 50% away through the film, I was like, okay, I think it's both of them. Now I'm not sure like where to classify Zara as. Like, she might fall into like most important secondary, but it certainly is Ali's story. I think we can agree upon that, like, first and foremost. Now, is it like connected to like she's like tethered to him in some sense, or is it purely through his eyes? That's what I'm not sure of. Regardless, I'm giving him and his actor. If you have the name in front of you, that would be nice.
Yeah, Amir Farouk Shemian, I believe.
Yes, I'm terrible with pronunciation. So what Steve-O just said, the child actor who played Ali in this film was spot on. And yes, his like 40-year-old like put upon facial expressions were fantastic because of everything we just said about the antagonist and about like the themes pretty much as well. So yeah, regardless, I'm giving him a 1. You might make a case that Zara is there. So with that, what do you guys think?
If I saw that kid in real life, I'd be like, "Damn, you've been through some shit."
Saw some shit, kid. Sure.
It's like
sure.
It's like the meme with the dog who is like at the 1,000-yard stare.
Like I don't know if he's a good actor or not, but his facial expressions
But they conveyed
sold so much of this story.
Agreed.
Yeah, completely agree. I think that he did a great job. I would say.
So you guys calling it mostly him?
I would say I think it's him.
Okay.
Zara, I would say is probably a secondary character.
See, like at first, right? The movie kind of leads you to believe it would be like a
Till the race at the end.
yeah. True.
Well, her to the extent she works at the protagonist angle, the at those parts where it basically is her with this other girl who actually got her old.
It's like a side plot.
Yeah,
but,
it's a side plot, but but it has she has her old slippers, and Zara loses a pen that her brother had won in class, gave to her as compensation. She lost it, and this other girl, finds it and gives Zara her pen. But the thing is, I don't really see that so much as a subplot, but more as something to flesh out the world to service the greater story. To the fact that you figured that Zara was gonna you're waiting for that moment where she's like, "Those are my shoes," and there's like this human connection between the two. And
in fact, I think Zara has a larger arc than Ali does in a lot of ways.
I don't know.
I might count her as actually, that's a very good point, Chris. I might count her as a protagonist because of that, specifically because of that, because she has that, like, actually very important part of this story with the other girl who has her shoes, and then she has the whole thing with the pen, gives it back, and like she kind of, she does. I think you're right, Ian. I think she learns more and becomes becomes more of a human. No, learns more throughout the story than he does, and like kind of has that arc. So I might include her in protagonist. I think that either way it's going to be a 1, but
I think he's the main protagonist, but I think she'd be a secondary because I can't imagine. There's no way this movie would exist without the two of them.
Yeah,
sure. It's definitely their story.
Either one of their journeys, because they do spend time with her in school with with the other girls and with the teachers, and they juxtapose that with what it's like for the older boys in their school. Because as we all learned from Persepolis, we learned that the
check out that episode.
Got it. Got the title right. But the thing is, you did learn that I don't know if it was prior to the Shah, but afterwards, definitely the boys and the girls were separated, and so they did show they showed more in his school, but they showed enough in her school to you get the dynamic of, which is why I said right away, I'm glad we read that before watching this movie.
More in his school.
So Ali right now. Well, I'm about Ali's age when this came out. So he's a he's a middle manager with the same briefcase put upon by his wife, trying to find shoes or something like that. Still to this
Something
day,
equivalent to that, yeah.
And I love that his school bag was a briefcase.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's
that's all they
grown
had.
into his face.
I assume his father gave him that because, like, well, I can't use this
He
anymore.
has a more youthful face now than he did when he made
Yeah.
this movie.
But no, like, like you guys said, like, I was totally fine with, like, counting them both. It's weird to me, like, if I have any, like, small nitpick complaint, I guess, with the script and or plot, it's that, like, they set it up to be Ali and Zara, and then she sort of, like, not goes away, but, like, she has, like, a lesser role in, like, the middle of it, but then it becomes, like, they converge back upon themselves, if that makes sense, right? So I think I'm more, like, I'm totally fine with calling them both pretty much the protagonists and definitely giving them both a lot of credit, but I feel like it's definitely Ali's story for the most part through his eyes, but Zara's, like, perspective also matters to him, so it's, like, close, very, very close, like, together.
And the funny thing is, I thought this film at the beginning, when he lost the sneakers, the shoes, because he went and stopped to get potatoes, and somebody came by and picked up the shoes accidentally with the rest of, like, I guess the recycling. I think we equated it to the...
It's a homeless guy picking up
stuff and, like, returning the recycling to get the nickels on the bottles and so forth. I figured it was going to be a film shot in one night where there's going to be these two kids running around southern Tehran.
This is in a modern American film.
Looking for their shoes.
But see, this shows you the prejudice and what we're used to here.
Good call.
And this is a much better film than you know, I don't know. But the thing is, this is a much better film than I thought it was going to be.
All right, so it's 1-0 rounds for protagonist, and we'll go to E for secondary.
Yes, well, all gym teachers are the same
Everywhere.
everywhere.
In every country, yes. Nice.
And I think this character elevated the movie because if they're
He
really
certainly
talking about
added something.
universal themes,
Mhm.
not Bob Vila, because Bob Vilas are everywhere as well. However, this
separate
gym
and good
teacher
character.
was such a stereotypical character that you can't help but feel like you're a kid again.
Because it's viewed from children's eyes,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
But is this... I really hope that every single country has this...
They certainly
The gym
must.
teacher.
Clearly, yes.
And it's wonderful. It's actually perhaps one of the most universal things I've ever seen in my entire life.
No.
That he alone deserves a 1 for secondary. However, the family was great. The father was,
Yes.
in a lot of ways, thematically, the driving force.
Mm-hmm.
The other kids worked really well. Like that one, seeing the sisters, this kind of sassiness. It had that all children have the same experiences, regardless
In
of
school,
whether you're in Iran, whether in America, whether you're in a religious school here or there. It's everyone can find that like universal childhood there, and I think that they, like many things in this film, they pulled off the world of a child very well.
Yes, I think the last thing I quite agree with, like, I don't have much more to add. I do think they rounded out the world, and yeah, it was funny to see, like, the stereotypical, like, somewhat overweight, somewhat, like, dickish gym teacher, and I thought you might say the father, like, to lead off with the father. I thought Ali's and Zara's father
Sorry,
was...
the thing, the gym teacher, I think, is the most memorable character in this.
Sure, like,
by how shocking it was.
Yeah, it encapsulates that very thing you said, but all I'm saying is, like, my, like, just add on is, like, every other character rounded out the world, was believable, like the southern section that they live in.
When he sneaks in the victory photograph,
Yeah,
that's exactly what any film anywhere would have put in there for that character.
Yeah, and like the teacher, the truant officer, and all that. Like, I'm giving them all collectively a 1, but those two you mentioned to lead off with are definitely the standout. So
yeah, absolutely. The guy
I don't know if that leaves much.
the guy that we were mentioning as Bob Vila is like Ali's teacher, who I guess his most defining feature is that he kind of
he resembles
like
Vila
a young Bob Vila.
Yes.
I don't know, like this old fucking house.
No,
type
this old
thing.
mosque.
This old mosque.
That was your own shit. Yes.
But yeah, he was good. The father was good. The mother didn't really do much.
I thought she might have more of a part, but she was fine. Again, it filled out their family life.
Yeah. And I think that everybody played their parts well.
Hmm.
Here's the thing. I think that if I'm going to give anything a 0 in this film,
I was
it might
wavering
be this
too.
one.
But I don't know.
I don't like all the character, all the secondary and the supporting characters are one-dimensional. I have to say that, like, none of them have any arc,
Father though.
except for the father. Actually, you're right. The father has a bit of an arc, mainly because he was portrayed himself in the first scene that he was in as like kind of an asshole, and then
he actually was
really
a caring,
turned out to be not an asshole, which is good. So if I'm gonna give this a point for anything, it will be for the father. Don't get me wrong, I love that the gym teacher was like the universe,
but he was certainly a stereotype. Yeah, but that's why I think it's effective because again, child dies, and you've seen that character like exist in real life everywhere.
Yeah, so exactly, and all these characters are fun and good, but like the only one that I really give a 1 for in terms of supporting characters is the father, who doesn't even have a name in this. He's credited, as far as we saw, as Ali's father
because it's from the children's view.
Yeah, and you know it's a really fascinating thing. I think I'm coming down on the side of a soft one, but I'm not 100% sure yet. Chris, why don't you talk and then we'll suss it out.
This is one of these films where, yeah, some of the supporting characters were more fleshed out than others, like the father and the little girl, Zara's contemporary. But it says something to our culture today when I point out the little lovely human moments. And one of the things that sticks out to me, because all these supporting characters are textures and they kind of help build the greater narrative. But one of the things that really struck me was the shopkeeper when
at the beginning,
Zara lost her shoe in the gutter, and he goes out and helps her. It's not even like, it's like, here, I'll get it for you. And it's just like such, no, what I'm saying is,
old man, get that shoe.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's
Old Man River.
It's such, in this world of indifference we live in.
Sure, no, I get what you're
It's just like such a lovely thing. And then when you see, like,
it's a very heartwarming moment, yeah.
Yeah, and it's such a subtle thing, but it's just a small thing. But I think it adds a lot to, because you've seen the one shopkeeper who's like, hey, not those potatoes, those potatoes, you take the little potatoes. And then, like you said, you have the upper class people where you have the grandfather and the grandson. And these are just lovely little textures, these human moments in all this, indifference and judgment. And so, even though like the smallest characters to me actually did play a part in the greater narrative.
So I have to say something here, and one of the reasons I want us to watch foreign films for our podcast is I'm very interested in the universality of art, and whether it's one-dimensional characters or if it's tropes or stereotypes or whatever. The idea that whether you're in Iran, whether you're in America, the same ones characters
persist.
Yeah. Why? Because we're all the same. And I think that this is and the appreciation of cinema and art allows us to bridge the artificial divides that we set up, and we can appreciate the human experience. And that's why, even though there's not much depth to the gym teacher, the fact that anyone in
there at
America
all
can watch this film and be like, holy shit, I know this character.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
The overweight gym teacher who is telling kids that they're not good enough. Like, like being fair or not fast enough or whatever.
It's not specific to any one region or culture or anything. It's just that person exists everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think that's also an important part of doing these, is the fact is that it's like, okay, you've got Iran or, where it's like at any given time they're the other. And you realize, no, they're just like all of us.
People that like everywhere.
Very well said. I think that the last two things that we have done, including this in Persepolis, really portray that.
Yeah, they encapsulate that idea,
the universality
well.
of the human experience. And like, very well put. I'm gonna end up on the side of a softer one, but
but still solid. All right. Well, why don't you continue on, buddy, with dialogue?
All right. So this is a really interesting point of this movie. I really like the dialogue in this. I think it's really well done in terms of mostly the dialogue between the brother and
Yes.
the sister, between Ali and Zara. I think that their conversational flow is like amazing, like really good.
I believe that they're siblings.
Yeah.
9 and 7 or whatever their ages are.
I also love his interactions with adults. You don't see very many interactions with Zara and adults, but you see a lot of interactions between him, between Ali and adults, and like he's always like, "Sir," like like.
Yeah, his
holding up the
deferential,
hand, holding up the hand.
Deferential
like,
cultural
May I
thing,
talk now? Basically, like it is kind of different, but it's also the same. Like what we
it's also a
learned when
universal
we were kids,
thing.
like put up your hand if you want to
And
talk.
also,
like
Ali is a 40-year-old businessman in a child's body. He would be differential.
yeah.
He's negotiating with all the adults that he has to try to figure and navigate with.
But I really do enjoy the dialogue of this movie. I think that it's well done and very natural. And just it feels like at the same time very slightly different than our type of dialogue that we have like in America, but at the same time,
But not too much.
But at the same time, it feels universal as well. Like it's like these are the same conversations we have; they're just done slightly differently. That type of thing. So like I really dig it, and I love like seeing the way that the conversation played out.
Yeah. I'll just quickly, the level of believability is 100% there, and I will say like when moments of levity called for it, it was spot on, and when it got serious, it was also spot on. Like so, it balanced those two sort of like scales quite well, and that's pretty much all to say. I'm giving it a very strong 1. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I'm giving it a 1 too, because not only was the dialogue natural, I never once felt that this is an adult writing for a child, which often
Yes,
happens.
good fucking call. Wow. Yeah.
So I'm like,
Good shit.
yeah.
Spot on. So 1 as well. All right.
Mhm.
All right. And that'll bring us to. Oh, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Do you not speak?
Hold on.
My bad.
This is Ian.
Now,
I just assumed I just wrote a 1 on before you go.
1, they preempt your criticism in this. You brought up something, and then, or I guess they answered your criticism. You brought up something, and they legitimately, the line dialogue was fine.
That's true. You're right.
Addressed it. However, this is not a 10 movie. I'm giving this a 0.
This is where we're going to take the point off. And I can see that. Like, again, precast, I said that to you guys. Like,
Because I actually think, even though it's
That's fair.
fine dialogue, the dialogue isn't the highlight of this film. And so if I can't narratively knock it, I can't give it a 2 versus a 3. This is where I have to take the 0 point off. It's unfair, but life is unfair.
As the film says to us. Sure. I mean, you almost got me. Like, it's a nice backdoor, but I think it works more than it doesn't. So I'm going to give it credit, and I'll address the 10 fact when we get to the end of it. But you almost got me. I see your point, and marked it with a 0. Got you.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with my 1 on this. If I was gonna give this a 0, it was gonna be on supporting, but you guys did convince me to give supporting a 1, so I'm gonna stick with the 1 on dialogue, and we'll move on.
All right, Chris, same thing.
Yeah, I'm giving it a 1.
All right, so now moving on to style, and that'll be you. In fact, buddy.
I love the style of this film. I loved the way it was shot. I love the different. We were talking about the repetitive thing of the kids changing shoes.
No, sorry. You say repetitive. Yes, they showed it a number of times, but it was meaningful and impactful, like relevant every time.
Let me
You know what I mean?
say, they always shot the same scene differently.
Yes.
It could have very gone the way of like a slapstick comedy where they are showing repetition. Maybe that's what I'm looking for. They show repetition in a very redundant way. They found a different way to shoot this,
But
and
to keep it engaging.
And yeah, exactly. And every time they did this, there were stakes involved. Is Ali going to get to class on time? It's just like, oh wow, it's raining now. It's just like the little details we were wondering about, like, are their shoes wet now? It's like,
Of course.
there was always stakes to, even though it was the same,
Seemingly small stakes, but it mattered to the...
even though
narrative.
the actions were the same or similar, they nevertheless maintained the high stakes to it. And I spoke about the race before, about when they decided to cut out all the sounds. And I mean, overall, there's a lot of things I can say on style, but I'm just going to give it a very strong one.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys disagree, but I think the race was one of, if not the best segments, compilation scenes of the movie, and everything else was fantastic. So I'll leave soundtrack for you guys in a bit, but I think it worked for me. At the beginning, it didn't quite work, but at the end, it did, and everything else, yes. Cinematography, lighting, again, that's something I've been paying attention to a lot more nowadays, and I think that was spot on, and everything else about the style in general worked and added to or was in service of the story. So,
yeah, I think that the stylist was great. We talked. I mean, I had somewhat of a running dialogue throughout the movie of like, oh, that shot was really incredible, or like this sequence was really great. Like the sequence where the shoe was like washing down the gutters was really amazing.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. Yeah,
like chasing that was really great. The race scene at the end was really incredible, and like just outside of that, there were just those were instances of like very kinetic, like action oriented scenes, but there were a bunch of like static shots that were really beautiful too, and like it's
sure.
I feel like it's a gorgeous city, especially at the time in 97, I guess, when this was shot, or like 96, 97 when this was shot. There are a lot of places that were just like rife for like really great shots, and they used them to the best of their ability. I thought that the style of this was really incredible. I did like the soundtrack or the score. I thought that was really well done, and like done in a sometimes in like kind of a cheeky way, but it was really well.
No, it was fitting.
Well done
for the most part. Yeah.
So I'm gonna give it a pretty strong one.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is that like style is perhaps the least thing I pay attention to generally in watching film, and pay attention to the narrative and just thematically. I have no proof to back this up. However, it felt like they shot it as if you were at the level of the children.
No, I think that is true. Like more often than not, agreed.
Because I felt really part of their role. Like in a sense, it's a city. There's a lot of like tight corridors and all that, but you feel like
things
a
seem
small person
bigger,
in a big world.
See a lot of low shots.
Yeah, exactly. I did notice that. You're not wrong. You're not going mad. 100%. I think that was the intent.
No, to support your argument, if you want to see like when they're going house to house to see who need gardening, at what point the father was doing it, at what point Ali took over the thing.
Yeah, and the perspective switched.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, 100%.
So I have to give that credit because it's very well done and very subtle as well.
Yep, very nice. So it's ones all around for style. That'll bring me home to recommendation. Yeah, F&A. I do recommend Children of Heaven. So we found, again, like, granted, we often look at, like, some of the best foreign films, and this was up against Life is Beautiful that year at the Oscars or the year after. And yeah, it's up there on par with a quality film like that. I absolutely would recommend it. Expand your horizons, as we've been trying to do. If you like the shit we've been doing recently, foreign-wise, then yeah, this one's up there. It's maybe not like something we would normally do on the surface, but for what it is goddamn solidly done and very enjoyable, and yeah, and somewhat uplifting and make you feel a little good here and there.
Yeah. It's
a little bit of brightness.
Even though it is classism, it's aspirational.
Yeah.
Because in the end, it's not the winning of the race that matters. It's him going with his father to do a little bit of gardening and work that brings the shoes
being
back.
close to family.
Well, the best part is like he wins the race, and that's not exactly what he wanted. Like he loses, even though he won, right? Like it's really great. Like in terms of that.
But I just have a quick finish with this. That I fully recommend this. I found this in YouTube commentary on a Separation trailer because I was looking up something for the Separation, and they had people were just like, "Oh, if you like Iranian films, here's a whole bunch you should watch."
Yeah.
And this was recommended multiple times. I think I'm going to go on and follow up and say that I fully support people who recommend this film.
Yeah,
agreed.
This was a really well realized film. I think that they had an idea about trying to make a movie about children and somewhat from the point of view of children, and they realize that Majid Majidi, who is the director, realized it very well. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that correctly, but I think that this is really well done. I highly recommend anybody check it out, but especially see this movie if you're still young, and not an old man like me. See this when you're younger, because
so,
I think this would be a great. I think Ian was reading Ebert's review of it.
Yep.
Earlier,
and he gave it a 4 out of 4, by the way.
And so he gave it a perfect score, but he said this. Something that kind of stuck with me from what you said was he said it would probably be a great intro to watching subtitled films
for children,
for kids.
Yeah.
And I completely agree with that. I think that this is a movie that you can watch at basically any age, and appreciate it. As long as you can read, you can enjoy this film. So I'm going to give it a strong one.
All right. Chris?
It is less than an hour and a half, and it is so worth your time. I mean, I've said this multiple times in this interview, or this podcast. It's just such a little simple ray of light. I mean, seriously, if you want to go and watch something that's uplifting, that's not saccharine, that's very grounded, but very, very human.
Positive.
It's very positive. It's just, I highly recommend this. This film actually made my day. It's been a tumultuous day, and it actually made my day.
Good cap off.
That's great to hear, because almost all of the recent reviews we've done, you said the film has destroyed your day. So, I'm glad that,
or you were
I'm glad that you had
it in a more hardcore way than this one.
I'm glad that this one really uplifted you.
Well, that was only the last one that destroyed my day, but yes.
Okay. Well, anyways, I think that'll wrap it up. Any final thoughts upon Children of Heaven before I give it out? All right. So, aside from Ian, Chris, Steve, and I have given it 10s, and Ian gave it a 9, which makes it a 9.75, which I think, is about right. I will say, I like your backdooring, because I was trying to consider it myself. I was saying I ended up giving it a 10. I don't think it's a perfect 10 movie, but I do think it's a 9.75 movie. So
that's right on the money.
I actually agree. I don't think it's a perfect 10 movie, but I could not give it a 10 based on what happened in this conversation.
I think
I'll be the bad guy.
He took the hit collectively, collectively gave it the 0 that we might have been
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the film. It might not be a perfect 10 film, but a 9.75 I think is perfect. And thank you for your contribution or detraction, whatever.
Exactly. Falcon A. All right, so I think I'll do it for tonight. We have been Lost Signals, and I've been Scott Thiller in search of my lost shoes. I've been here with Happy Birthday, Jonathan Ian Manzer.
Happy birthday!
I'm officially an ancient fuck right now.
As always. And Stephen Amosi.
I'll be running for the vacation, thank you.
And Chris Morgan.
It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
And we'll see you next time. Cheers.
Editing and engineering by Stephen Hermosi. Music by Christopher Morgan. Check us out on YouTube and iTunes for the shows, and on Facebook and Twitter for updates. Or Mott's?